Why don't we go right into Casa Bonita, Mi Amor?
That was a great documentary. So Casa Bonita, it was a restaurant from like the 70s, and it's a Mexican restaurant, but it was like amusement park, and it had like crappy food, but it was a kind of an event that you would go to. It was featured in a South Park episode. Trey and Matt, they bought it when it went into bankruptcy.
Facetiously referred to as the Disneyland of Mexican restaurants, which is a hilarious mantra. They bought it for $3 million in an as-is state. They anticipated $3 to $4 million worth of renovations, thinking they could really just kind of get it reopened, get it fixed up a bit. I think their focus was like, we hear that the food is really gross, so we're going to improve the food. But what they found was a building that really should have been inspected before purchase, probably.
So just the HVAC, we're looking at like $4 million.
Perplexes me how nobody did a walkthrough. It seems like nobody did, like no facilities person on the Trey and Matt side of things. The people that will be holding the bag if what happens. But they didn't know how completely, you got to consider. So obviously the business of Casa Bonita hadn't been doing all that great for a long time. So it's not like they put a lot of money back into it. And also most of the code and compliance and construction was done, between like 50 and 40 years ago, from HVAC to ceiling tiles to electric. There's water, there's like cliff divers and stuff. There's an area for them to get changed and shower and swim. And that's like near high voltage.
And the part they were coming out of, there's like, pipes and stuff. It's like really dangerous and claustrophobic and gross. Yeah. And you might be electrocuted.
Like it looked like, the dude, their facilities guy said it, but it looked like one of the most dangerous things ever. A horrible accident waiting to happen.
There was going to be catastrophic failure. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when.
Yeah, you don't even have to be an expert. You can just like look at it with your bare naked eye and you're like, that's a problem.
That's going to kill people. That's going to kill people. That's going to kill people.
Yeah, so if you have to replace all the HVAC in a 50,000 square foot space, like in this, like all of it has to come out and put in new, you'll be doing that with cranes because these are giant HVAC units from 50 years ago. On and on and on and on. They had to, and so they quickly learned, like, we're going to have to put tens of millions of dollars into this and you won't even notice any aesthetic difference.
We're going to spend $30 million and it's going to look exactly the same.
And only then will we be able to actually, re-outfit the place and draw new customers and kind of start to create our vision for the place.
I can't believe it's all over. What do we do now? What do you mean? Now we can finally play the game.
I love anything like this, especially when you have, our beloved creators, the South Park creators at the center of it. It makes it more interesting. But anything that's like, we bought this and it's a problem and we have to solve it, that automatically gives me it gives me pleasure in my brain.
Did you watch Kitchen Nightmares, the Gordon Ramsay show? Did you like that show?
I haven't seen it, but I bet I would like it. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and if you ever watch it, I recommend the UK version because it's a little bit less like reality show polished, a little bit less hooks before the commercial type of stuff. It's a little bit more chill. It's him walking into these like, kind of half-assed restaurants in the middle of London and stuff. And the show there is he's got the craziest ego of all, but he lives up to his ego. And then these business owners all have terrible egos. And so he kind of destroys their ego and then builds them back up. And this is similar in as much as there's, this giant problem to solve. And these guys are worth a lot of money. Their companies are worth a lot of money. They can absorb a $40 million. That's what it came out to. A $40 million hit that they weren't expecting. I mean, there's a cool inflection point in the movie where,
as ridiculous as it sounds, it was better for us to take a $10 million loss than to keep going.
They were kind of $10 million deep and realized, like, if we keep going, we could end up at $40 million. And so would we rather take the loss now instead of going that far? And because it just made no business sense at a certain point to redo the place. Like, how many years will it take to make back $40 million? Matt Stone recently said that they're seeing like 40,000 people a week now. So it's making money. It's doing very well. He even was laughing and said like they've been reached out to about opening more Casa Bonitas elsewhere, which they find hysterical because it was hard enough to kick this one back open. But it seems like, for Coloradans, it's a huge cultural deal. It obviously was for Trey, less so for Matt, but obviously was for Trey. So for instance, there's a big fountain out front. The plumbing on it hadn't been working in years and years and years. And so the only way to repair it was to take the entire thing out and put it in a new fountain. And like the moment citizens saw the fountain coming out, they got instantly pissed off, And so Matt and Trey were like, I've never really been in this situation before. We're being watched, carefully.
Yeah. They're part of local news, like constantly. Yeah. Every movement they were, they were tracking.
What the movie ends up being about, Matt was saying, he was like, we have a documentary crew that documents all kinds of things that we do for potential content. And this was a case where, we could have done like 3 or 4 episodes, but he was like, really, there was a story, and the story was Trey Parker's, specifically Trey's, connection to this place and his artistic process, the way he chases, an artistic endeavor of his, when he has an artistic aim. Now, there's no getting in his way. Nobody will ever outwork the guy. And you see that through his whole career, from Cannibal the Musical to Book of Mormon to Team America. We're going to get this puppet movie done by hell or high water. There's always been this question, this open question of what does Matt do and what does Trey do? It seems like Trey does everything, and Matt is like his like emotional support dog or something. And we've talked about this on the show before, about like Matt at the end of the day is like a vital support friend, somebody who keeps Trey moving.
Yeah, he's a facilitator,
Yeah.
He's definitely a facilitator. I wouldn't say he puts guardrails, but he definitely he provides a realistic vision for how things would go on. He's definitely that almost practical side of his brain. And
I always knew, because he would get credited with like a producer role. So I always figured, I always heard that he interfaced with the studio more than Trey did. So yes, I you could see that he was more business. Trey was more creative.
Matt's always been the money guy in our partnership. I was like, so what are we gonna do? And Matt said kind of like, I don't know. I was like, oh, you don't know. So that means there's a chance.
What surprised me here was it seemed like Matt was holding all the financials, and even was kind of, from Trey's perspective, ultimately the decision maker about the financials. Like Trey was asking Matt, like, hey, do you think we could still do this? Would this be okay? Like Trey was asking him for permission. I always thought of it as like, if anybody works for anybody, it's Matt works for Trey.
I saw in Matt that he's like, oh, he might say we can still do it.
This showed a different side of it, which was like, just because Trey wants to do it doesn't necessarily mean it gets done. Matt will give it to you straight, and
yeah.
And there was a couple
Filter
times,
it.
like there was, where they went over, the new target had been $30 million, and then somebody slipped into conversation, $32 million. And Matt was like, you just spent an extra $2 million and just mentioned it casually.
It's $32 million? And I go, yeah. I go, well, it was Friday, it was $30 million. They go, yeah, no. I was like, that's $2 million. Just like,
So it seemed like he was getting kind of pissed off along the way, but it kept an even head for sure. And Trey didn't seem frustrated until towards the end, when the creative vision wasn't coming together, quite the way he wanted.
It just was so not Casa Bonita. It felt like a nightclub in San Diego.
It's so great to see somebody whose mind is on fire, like Trey Parker's is, walking into a space and finding opportunities and exploiting opportunities, changing his mind at the last second. There were some performers that they hired for Casa Bonita, and he kept changing things on them, and they seemed to get the pissiest about it. Nobody had any sympathy for them at all.
We just need time with them. We keep getting cut short on time. I get it.
You guys have had 8 times the time of anyone else. I get it, but they gotta suck it.
It is so fascinating, especially with something like a physical location, like a restaurant, or like basically a resort-ish restaurant. Or a destination restaurant, and he's like just the way he's like, when it's starting to open, he's like walking around, his hands are like behind his back, and he's like just taking it in. It's just interesting to just see him take it in, even after he's put in all this work, and like he's seeing what's working, what's not working. It's very fascinating to see that process, especially something so different. Like, this is not a television show. It's a location, so he's inhabiting the space that he's creating. It's interesting.
And yet it feels like so many of the same principles apply. Like there was a scene where he was walking around a table as if it was a writer's room. And it seemed like they hired some like South Park concept artists to do some of the design. And I know that their producer, Ann Garofino, who just seems to be attached to literally any of their endeavors, up to and including opening a Mexican restaurant. You were saying like the way he walks around the facility, you imagine that like Book of Mormon opening night is like that too. You know, just for him, so much of it is like, does this feel right? It's so much of it is him listening and comparing that to the vision, because he has a vision, and that vision is in motion. Yes, it's like he's chasing his own vision constantly, and he's listening for that tone. And a lot of times when he's directing people, he's talking about tone as well, talking about how it should feel.
And then they talk about, like, after they have executed this, like, letting it go and letting other people manage it. And it's that was very interesting as well, being like, okay, we're done with this, and we have to be done with this because we're moving on to other things.
And we're not going to be here making it happen. You know, we don't even live here. All you can do is, it's like kind of like having a child where you get them ready to go out in the world and then you let go.
At first it feels like, wow, I bought Disneyland, or wow, I bought an amusement park. I bought Cartman Land. Oh, cool. Blackbird's Cave. You quickly realize, like, I didn't really buy Casa Bonita, did I? I spent $40 million to keep Casa Bonita open for 50 more years. That's what I did. You know, Casa Bonita is bigger than my current purchase of it. This is more to make sure that my child and her children get to go to Casa Bonita.
For my daughter, I want it for her grandkids. I want it for my friends' kids.
Sometimes some things will die unless a wealthy person saves it. Because there was no profit path to getting that thing back open, right?
You know, that reminds me, there was a local restaurant around here, White Hut, and it made these like it's kind of like, you can think of it as like old McDonald's, like McDonald's, the burger place, where it's like a quick order, burgers and fries, very kitschy, and the people who are owning it they're just dying off. They had to sell it. It was not making any money. And guess what? Some rich guy came in who grew up on those burgers, bought it, and kept it alive. And he's probably going to keep it alive for another 50 years because sometimes you need somebody with the passion for the thing to keep it alive.
He talks so much about, like, what is Casa Bonita, right? Like, I think whenever you approach any entrepreneurial endeavor like that, it kind of all starts with, like, what is the thing? What is it? You know, and so, is it the Disneyland of Mexican restaurants, or is that just a facetious one-liner? It's probably a facetious one-liner. So then what is it? It's Mexican food made by Americans in Colorado. That's what it is. You know, so there is like a huge kitsch element to it. And there is like an inauthenticity to it. And the inauthenticity needs to be authentic, you know? So like when he found like that Elvis movie where he's like, that's Elvis singing with Mexicans is the feel, you know? Like down to like, he cared about the formations of the divers. You know, did you see that? He really cared about the diving.
Could we see that timing? Someone comes out, they praise, they jump in, they climb. As they're climbing, another person dives. No.
Yeah, it's very fun. It's a very fun documentary. I recommend it highly, highly.
Yeah. I think it's some of the best. I mean, if you're a South Park fan, definitely. If you're not, definitely. Like if you just like watching cool people figure things out, you know, definitely check it out. It's only 90 minutes or something. It's on Paramount Plus. Casa Bonita, Mi Amor. Great movie.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.